Some people talk about, are you born or is it something that you learn to be an entrepreneur? And I think that I have learned it along the way. I think I'm here today because I founded a little company called Monster.com. Very, very early startup in the internet kind of scheme of the world. There were 200 websites when I got started, and by the time I realized I had to register my site, I was the 454th.com. I had an incredible ride. I partnered up with a company called TMP Worldwide relatively early in the process. And we built Monster from about 400,000 in sales the first year to well over $1 billion in sales today. We started in Boston and quickly we're in New England, across the United States, now in 40 countries. Monster is, I think, probably best known for a simple commercial. When I grow up, I want to file all day. I want to have a brown nose. Yes, sir, no, sir. Anything for a raise, sir. When I grow up, the last little vignette was I want to be forced into early retirement. And I did just that. In 2005, I retired from Monster. I have a couple definitions that I'll share with the group today about being an entrepreneur. My first is just the straight definition is whenever everyone around you thinks you're crazy and you still think you have a good idea and you act on it. And so calling my business Monster was for sure acting out a bold way to position a company. Probably the number one important decision that I made was naming the company Monster. The second most important decision was probably focusing in on the job seeker, even though the employer paid our freight, paid the bill. And by focusing in on the job seeker, it was half about a better job, half about a better life, as a simple concept of loving your job. And that was really a big part of my challenge to job seekers all over the world. I had a chance to also develop another definition around being an entrepreneur. It's that you start alone and you end alone as an entrepreneur. And so when you have an idea that nobody else has, no one likes it either. And so you have to be bold and I think have your leadership hat and your passion hat and maybe your crazy hat on to think about starting a business. One of the things I realized is the longer I was in the business, the more you give away your job. And so I started out as the only salesperson, but when we had almost 1,000 salespeople, my voice as a salesperson became less important. I did the accounting for about a minute, but you end up with a 30-person accounting department. And so as you give your job away more and more, you realize at some point as an entrepreneur that the company doesn't need you anymore. And in fact, maybe they don't even want you anymore. And so I had a chance to retire from Monster. And I've started a number of businesses in the baby boomer space. I started a kind of an incubator, or some would call it an accelerator today. And that's another theme of today around the venture capital investment and the idea generation here in the Alabama area. But my focus, if you look at my entrepreneurship and my leadership, was to continue in the dot-com space. I created a company called Eons. And I have since developed Eons.com, which is a social network for baby boomers. Eonsville Media, which is an ad network that has a relationship with about 25 additional websites that focus on the baby boomer space. I also have a dating site for 40-plus singles, hopefully singles, and it's called Meetcha, Meetcha, like nice to meet ya. And I have a business which I carved off as a separate company that I'm proud of, which is called Tributes.com. And that is a local and national obituary news site. Has a lot of the same characteristics as Monster. It's a classified section that was begging to be taken from the paper and to be migrated to the internet. And that business is growing very quickly. And that kind of rounds out my 4 companies that are in the portfolio. When I think about a venture club, or when I think about a business association, sometimes it's a chamber, sometimes it's a software morphed into a internet or leadership organization. I speak at a number of them. I guess I would answer the question of the importance of this kind of event. I wrote a book on networking. And I think there's 4 kinds of networkers. And I think as a good networker, you may be all of these things, but the first kind of networker is a swan, someone that looks beautiful but swims around in a very small pond. And My example at a networking function like this is some people come and they come with their best friend, and they go to the bar together, they go and sit together, they go to the bathroom together, they leave together and talk in the parking lot and say it was such a huge event, but yet they didn't do anything at all. So the Swan, I think, is kind of plays it safe. To finish the story, there's the Swan, there's the butterfly that kind of flits about, doesn't leave much of an impression, but gets to know a lot of people. There's the dolphin, which I like, which is the smart networker, maybe works from a group perspective, but is playful and out and smart and inventing new ways to both entertain themselves and also to provide food and whatever for the pod. And then there's the fourth, which is the lion, and the lion is the executive, established territory, eats what it needs, eats what it kills, and it really has established a hierarchy. And I think it's always fun to try to say, okay, which are you? Are you the swan? Are you the dolphin? Are you the butterfly? Are you the lion? In the end, networking is hugely important to making connections. The natural face-to-face reaction of meeting someone that you've tried to call 16 times and you're like, oh, you're John. Yeah, I know who you are. And that it's changed so much maybe in the last 25 years. I think about when I really started in business, it was like, here's the phone book and a phone, just start calling people. Well, today no one even answers the phone. So we've had to reinvent completely new ways to network, and I think these kinds of events face-to-face is hugely valuable.